Gunman kills 2 at ICE immigration facility in Texas, Channel 4 News reports.
A huge police presence near an Immigration and Customs Enforcement field office in Dallas. A main artery northwest of the city centre cut off after a gunman opened fire, reportedly from a nearby roof.
I met him once and he was unbearable. You met the shooter? Oh, you're talking about the rep, the New Mexico rep. Jesus Christ.
Police called to the scene at 6:40 local time.
The DPD was able to locate the shooter, who was deceased. We're going to be working this investigation shoulder to shoulder with our federal partners.
The investigation centered on the building next to the ICE Enforcement and Removal Center. The shooter firing from this roof, reportedly killing 2 detainees and leaving a third critically injured in hospital. The FBI saying no law enforcement officers were hit, but releasing this image of bullets found near the dead gunman.
I can confirm at this time that the FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted violence.
Yeah, this is like this is an incredibly strange piece of evidence, I will say. But I guess it might have been that he shot at something. Breaking news update: shooter fired into an unmarked van transporting ICE detainees in Dallas. Detainees were struck inside the van. 2 people inside were killed and one was injured. The shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, sources say. That makes a little bit more sense as far as like the shooter being anti-ICE for sure, even though the bullets saying anti-ICE is just strange in general.
Again, this is just the most recent example of this type of attack.
Since President Trump came to power promising to deport 1 million undocumented migrants a year, ICE has become the public face of his hardline immigration policy, carrying out raids on workplaces and car parks. Officers often marked.
I think one of the strangest parts about this is that given that the shooter shot and killed ICE detainees, this administration that has literally presented the people that are being detained by ICE as violent criminals, that has actually done everything in their power to like put them in alligator Alcatraz, dehumanize them, treat them like they're Pokemon, are now going to turn around and be like, what a heinous crime that this shooter committed. It's like, bitch, you want that crime. You're basically doing that. Like you're basically doing exactly what this shooter is doing, but for a more convoluted, from a more convoluted and technically not illegal perspective, I guess.
Pulling people off the street. The field office attacked today, subject to a bomb threat last month. A month earlier, a detention facility, also in Texas, attacked in what authorities said was a coordinated ambush.
For those of you who don't know the history of the Bracero program, in the aftermath of the Bracero program, there were mass deportation initiatives that were being taken place. And in this very same state, the state of Texas, you had ranchers with guns running around looking for marshals to shoot and kill. The reason why they were doing that is because they did not want their neighbors to be apprehended. They did not want their farmhands to be apprehended and mass deported. This is in American history. This has happened in American history. Not to say that this person is not like operating on some left-leaning ideology or whatever, but just understand that this has happened throughout American history. This is not new. I brought this up a lot. People get very frustrated when mass deportations start taking place, and then they take matters in their own hands in a country like America where everybody has guns and a proclivity to do violent things, and then they do like this.
That left a police officer shot and injured.
To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop.
Bro, this dude killed detainees, and these guys are still talking about the fear that ICE agents have to experience on a daily basis. Once again, there is no consideration for the victims here. There is no consideration for the victims who were already apprehended and were presented as people that were slated to be deported from the country for the crime of being born on a different side of the fucking border. And what they're going to do in this circumstance is basically make it so that it's illegal for people like myself to say, you shouldn't do this. You should not engage in mass deportations. They're going to say, how dare you say that? You're threatening the lives of ICE agents. No, I'm not. I'm not doing that at all. Political violence is unacceptable. Obviously, I have never advocated for political violence. I don't advocate for political violence, but it doesn't matter. The violence coming from the system here is also unacceptable, and we should be able to talk about that.
Hi, guys. Yeah, officials spent most of this press conference.
Yeah, mass deportations and mass apprehension, not violent. Saying we shouldn't do that and we should actually offer conditional amnesty to every single person that has been living on U.S. soil, that hasn't done any crimes or anything, and are simply just trying to make ends meet. That's the real violence. Don't you dare do it.
Violence has no place. It is wrong. And we should come together.
I agree. Which is literally the reason why I abhor and disavow and also consistently criticize the actions of this administration. Mass deportations is an inherently violent process, but a lot of people only experience that or only recognize that as like unjust and violent behavior when they see it happen to their immediate loved ones or when they see it happen in their neighborhoods. When it's happening elsewhere, when it's happening far away to people that you do not actually consider the humanity of, you have no capacity of recognizing it as like an inherently violent act.
Bill, what is with this? I don't know if you would call it a trend, but for lack of a better word, the trend we're seeing where these assassins and mass shooters now like to try and carve little messages on shell casings before they carry out these shootings. Is this something that you have seen before the last few months, or is this new?
No, it is not new at all. Americans are a uniquely violent nation with an access to an arsenal of weapons. And also, Americans are pretty suicidal on top of everything else. In the past, suicidal dudes that wanted to make a name for themselves, that find themselves in the pit of despair, would go to a school and do this kind of thing, and nobody gave a shit about them. It became normalized. So now, in the aftermath of a couple high-profile assassination attempts with like Thomas Crooks and numerous other people now who also have that same exact tendency are looking at targets. They're looking at political targets. They're looking at high-profile political people, or they're looking at politicians in general. They're looking at ICE in general to exercise their violent desires against in an effort to make a name for themselves. Because it turns out when 46 school shootings take place in the country, they're like, well, that's just going to be yet another school shooting that nobody gives a fuck about. And copycats are obviously super commonplace. This is just how it goes. Now the new meta, it seems, is to deliver a message or something. Back in the day, it used to be called going postal because you see a lot of postal service people do this kind of stuff, right? People would do this at their workplaces, and then it became schools that people would shoot up. The only difference now is who the targets are. The targets are more consequential in the eyes of the administration, in the eyes of the media.
It may happen periodically over a period of time where individuals, murderers, or other people may do something similar to this, but it's not a trend. This seems to be certainly a trend. You know, we saw it with the Mangione shooting in New York against the United Healthcare CEO, where he left his bullets on the sidewalk. We saw it with Charlie Kirk.
You're not taking this anti-ICE bullet marking seriously, are you? I mean, it looks strange for sure, but now that we know that the shooter was not actually like directly shooting at detainees deliberately and was instead shooting at an unmarked van that it thought had a bunch of ICE agents in it, it does develop a profile. It does develop a motive that makes more sense. The anti-ICE part of the writings are so stupid, but you know, who knows?
And then you have the shooter, who sources identified to Fox News as 29-year-old Joshua John. We're trying to find out more about this individual who takes a gun, looks like, according to the stripper clip that we saw a picture of posted by the FBI director, that it was just a typical hunting rifle with a capacity of 5 cartridges. Takes that weapon, aims it at the ICE facility, starts firing at will, and then takes their own life. And is it this rhetoric that people just keep doubling down on that suddenly causes someone to snap?
Yeah, this question in and of itself is bringing the attention back to those who have a difference in opinion with the administration and those who understand that these mass apprehensions that are taking place are f***ed up. Just as it was the case with the Charlie Kirk execution, these guys immediately turn around and go, you know what the real problem is? It's the people that are naysayers. It's the people that are not patriotic enough. It's the people that are not sufficiently pro Donald Trump. They are the ones who are causing this discontent, as though if no one was saying, hey, man, this is pretty fucked up, people would not actually come to that conclusion on their own. The notion that we cannot actually criticize the administration for doing violent mass apprehensions of random people living on U.S. soil that are working to make ends meet, like that we are not allowed somehow to say that this is wrong objectively when it is literally wrong, is ridiculous.
You know, with kind of borrowing a little bit from my behavioral analysis friends, you know, you just don't know what reaches a individual and what breaking point they have. And although many people can kind of, you know, flick this rhetoric off as being just that, political rhetoric, it does affect a number of people. And I think today, John, with all of the various sources that people are getting information, or ones that maybe want,
yeah, they're going to come for people calling Nazi-style individuals a Nazi-style individual or a fascist, or they're going to come for people that are calling ICE Gestapo. Of course, the real problem here is the administration's carte blanche approach to unlimited cruelty to those that they have designed as enemies of the state, random fucking neighbors of ours. 1 in 14 households in the United States of America have at least one undocumented migrant. Think about that. That's what they want to do. They want to go after 1 in 14 households, and we can't even say that that is fucked up. We can't say that that's up. We can't say like, hey man, there's an alternative out there, which is called documenting these people. They're just human beings. Nope. You have to say that they're violent animals that are here to destroy the country. Otherwise, you're an enemy of the state and you must be punished. It's ridiculous. Why didn't they talk about the rhetoric when it was the Walmart shooting, the El Paso shooting, the Albuquerque shooting, the Buffalo, New York shooting, Dylan Roof? Do you want to know why? Because those guys were objectively right-wing, openly far-right, anti-government extremists of the white nationalist variety. What they've decided now is that even if you have someone who is of that background, you can just get away with fucking lying. That's all you need to do, just lie and claim that the shooter was a leftist, like they did in the Minneapolis shootings. Both in the first Minneapolis shooting, with Democratic congresspersons, Democratic state legislatures being targeted, you could just claim that the shooter was a leftist or whatever, and people will just go along with it. No fact checks necessary there. Or even with the Annunciation Church shooting, where the profile in the background of that shooter was very clearly a far-right, white nationalist, esoteric, nihilistic neo-Nazi, right? No leftist is ever going to put the names of prominent white nationalists and white supremacist shooters on their gun or talk about it in their manifesto. But it doesn't matter. That didn't stop right-wingers from going along with this narrative that these guys were leftists. They're just creating a profile or creating an environment of hysteria. And the reality of the matter is, just like when the Democrats did not actually engage in any sort of counter-messaging initiative to correct the record on migrants not being this out-of-control violent force that was destroying the American social fabric, they are completely lost in the fucking sauce. They don't know. They're completely oblivious of what the administration is doing now. They're creating another manufactured hysteria around left-wing violence. And the Democrats are not turning around and saying, you're wrong. Violence is a constant. It's devoid of any sort of ideological background in the United States of America. But if we were to look at political violence, more often than not, it is actually the right that is engaging in political violence, not the left. And for years and years, the right did not do a single thing. It is mind-boggling to me that all of our leaders are just lost. They're gone. They're nowhere to be found in this process. They're nowhere to... They're not saying anything. They're not correcting the record. They're not even remotely invested. Not realizing the warning signs. Not realizing that the administration is, once again, whipping up an entirely new manufactured hysteria that they will use to erode the First Amendment. They will use to basically stamp out any kind of political discontent. And it will not stop with radical elements in American society. It won't stop. If you think that it's just going to be people like myself, for example, you're wrong. Kash Patel literally does not know who Dylan Roof is.
white supremacist propaganda murdered 9 black parishioners in Charleston in 2015. Do you deny this?
I'm sorry. Dylan Ruth?
Roof?
The director of the FBI doesn't know who Dylan Roof is. Dylan Roof is one of the most high-profile white supremacist shooters. I cannot believe that he does not know who Dylan Roof is. Under different circumstances, I would say he's lying. But in this day and age, the incompetence, the sheer incompetence from this administration is so obvious that I don't know. I don't think he knows who Dylan Roof is. I don't think he knows. I totally believe that he is that stupid.
Roof, can you give me some more information?
You're head of the FBI, you probably know this. If you don't know, that's fine.
You can give me a reminder. I've got a lot in front of me.
It was national news.
God damn, he's so stupid. We got absolute nutters leading. We got the nutters leading the madhouse. Oh my God. What do you expect? Of course.
Mask mandates for ICE officers. A new rule proposed and put forward by Governor Gavin Newsom. Take a listen to what he said on Saturday. I want to get your response.
I'll be signing a bill, the first in the nation.
Yeah. Again, this is what I meant when I said they're going to go after anything and everything. Gavin Newsom makes a perfectly reasonable initiative in the state of California, which demands that public servants actually follow the law. And they can't hide their identity when they're conducting these operations. There's so many good reasons for this provision to exist. Why, you might ask? Because if you have faceless, masked, armed thugs of the state that don't present their identification, that don't have to present their identification, you can have copycats. This has already happened. There are plenty of people who have been arrested for falsely presenting themselves as ICE agents to kidnap and sexually assault people. Yeah, just a reminder that Republican candidate Valentina Gomez posted a video simulating the execution of a migrant in December. And then they turn around and they go, violent rhetoric, violent rhetoric, violent rhetoric.
I'm very proud to say that I work for ICE, and to have to take off my polo or, hide behind so that way my family is not put in danger or my colleagues are not put in danger. And I'm very, like I said, proud to work for ICE and to have to kind of put my polo down or my badge away for the...
At no point do these people go, maybe what we're doing is fucked up. If you're proud, why do you have to hide? Oh, it's the threats. It's the fears. Unironically, that fake narrative for law enforcement is making this environment less safe. It is an inevitability at this point that someone is going to think that they are being kidnapped by some random people coming out of an unmarked car and literally exercise their Second Amendment rights. They're going to try to do castle doctrine eventually. How can people not realize this? I'm fearful of the repercussions. I'm fearful of what comes next. I don't want that to happen. All the while, we're not even considering the consequences of these kinds of initiatives. Like, not only are they unpopular, but they're not good at all. They're not for the betterment of society. Like mass deporting random people that are working in farms and mass deporting people at their court dates, outside of their court dates in the courthouse. Like, how is that good for anybody? You designed a manufactured hysteria around the supposedly violent, undocumented migrants that were not being apprehended and that were not being arrested by the previous administration. This was bullshit. If someone, regardless of their documentation, commits a heinous crime, of course they were prosecuted and subsequently deported as well. It is ridiculous. They lied about every step of this process. They made it seem as though previously ICE was woke and the woke judges and the woke cops would just let people go. Oh, wow, you've decapitated 8 babies, but you're a Guatemalan migrant? I guess we have to let you go. Joe Brandon is too woke. Like, what are you talking about? That's not what happened. Of course that's not what happened. And not a single Democrat turned around and said, what are you talking about? Everything you're saying is a lie.
When, elected officials are out there on national television saying that, these ICE agents are modern day Gestapo, well, what are you supposed to do? I mean, if somebody heard that, during...
What do you mean? It's true. And not only is it true, but it's also protected speech. What the fuck are we talking about? What are we supposed to say? How you do not get to dictate the way that people criticize the administration. That is goddamn un-American. What the fuck are we doing? That's not even allowed in other countries where they already have hate speech enforcements either. Like there's no nation state on the planet that isn't like a straight up dictatorship where you can't say the government is behaving like a fascist administration and they just apprehend you. You know where they do that? In fucking Turkey, they do that. Okay. That's ridiculous. Turkey does not have a First Amendment. They don't have free speech there. It's ridiculous that in a country like the United States of America, we can't even say the truth out loud anymore, where you're like, oh, sorry. It's just hurting people's feelings. It's like it's fomenting too much discontent, because at the heart of this matter is precisely that. You are making people too angry. All politics is about the distribution of resources and the distribution of power. And a part of that is violence. Who gets to do it? Who gets to be the recipient of violence? In theory, what we're talking about here is that when the state behaves in a violent manner, people are supposed to say, okay, that's permissible, right? That's appropriate. That is the design of the state. It's done to protect as many people as possible, because the state has a monopoly on violence. When cops go in and brutalize someone, or when cops go in and even arrest someone, even someone who deserves it, that is permissible violence, right? Because you are taking away someone's freedom. You are basically shackling them for an extended period of time, if not permanently for the rest of their lives. And there are instances where that is appropriate, okay? There are instances where that is totally appropriate. If someone's a serial killer, of course it's appropriate for the cops to literally arrest them, apprehend them, detain them, put them behind bars to ensure that they don't kill again, right? But that broad analysis does not factor into all state violence. People don't look at a situation like when ICE agents are doing the same thing to people that haven't done heinous crimes, that have simply crossed the border or got a visa at some point and overextended and stayed after their visa told them to leave, basically after their visa was over, and are simply working a regular honest day's job in a field somewhere, or as a barback, or in a fucking restaurant, or in a hospitality industry. Like, those people are not doing something that justifies this level of apprehension, that justifies their freedoms being taken away from them. Those people deserve to be documented. Those people deserve to have the proper clearance to continue working inside of U.S. borders. You can say you are wrong, and that's fine, but you have to explain to me why that is bad for the overall societal good. Why is that a bad thing? This is how discourse is supposed to take place. But these guys don't want to have this conversation any longer. They just simply want to apprehend people, detain them, arrest them, deport them, rip them away from their families, rip them away from their everyday existence, and kick them off into a concentration camp elsewhere in El Salvador or in other countries that they are not familiar with at all, and just make them into people who have to do slave labor elsewhere. Okay, this is completely ridiculous. Like, the crime does not match the standard of violence that the state is applying, and everybody understands that reality. That's precisely the reason why Trump basically started off this conversation about mass deportations by lying about migrants, by saying that migrants were all serial rapists and bloodthirsty murderers. Because if everyone was on board with just like doing this kind of thing to their neighbors, he wouldn't have to lie and say that every single Guatemalan migrant is actually doing mass rapes and mass decapitations all around the country. But yeah, they have this and this. FBI reveals the Dallas ICE sniper left behind bullets with the text "anti-ICE" on him. 29-year-old Joshua John committed suicide after killing 2 detained illegal migrants. His profile picture on Facebook is of a communist. It's a glorious exposition comrade is the meme that's on the profile picture, which is another way to say cool story, bro, right? As far as the shooter's background goes, as far as the shooter's leanings goes, I'm sure the FBI will do everything in their power to make it an associate of Antifa or anti-fascist violence or whatever the they're trying to present as like the real fear that you must, or transgender people, you know what I mean? Like the real the real enemies of America, right? But here is the latest statement from our deranged Department of Homeland Security. I need you to understand something, okay? When these institutions drop all notion and pretext of impartiality in an effort to pursue the truth, when they become unreliable resources, all hell breaks loose. The reason why people are less invested or less ready to believe whatever the FBI says or the DHS says now more than ever is because they see the Department of Homeland Security from that same account post Pokemon memes. Okay, when you do that, when you become an unserious agency, how the do you expect people to take you seriously? This is incredibly destabilizing. I am no liberal by any means. You know this already. One of the things that I criticize liberals is about the infallibility of institutions, the defense of institutions. But unironically, this is one of the problems when these institutions are not actually defensible. What is this fact check? What do you mean? What? It's not like fake. Yeah, we all saw it. What are we talking about? Why is does this require a fact check? Homeland Security posted a video featuring Pokemon theme song where they made the individuals that they're detaining and apprehending, they made them out to be like Pokemon. Gotta catch them all. When you do stuff like that, or when you're Kash Patel and you are a patently unserious person in broad daylight and you come out with information like this, people are obviously not going to be immediately, they're just not going to believe you. In the eyes of even Republicans, as a matter of fact, this is part of the reason why even Republicans are like, maybe it was Israel that killed Charlie Kirk, and they don't even fucking believe the FBI. This is what happens when you're unprofessional. This is what happens when you are openly biased. This is what happens when you reveal fake information or false information without actually taking this investigation seriously. I'm using the Tyler Robinson case because that was a major issue for the FBI. That was a major issue for the Department of Homeland Security as well. But then also on top of that, they routinely fucking lie. Like, for example, that same account lied and claimed, the Department of Homeland Security account, lied and claimed that there was no 5-year-old that was detained while agents were attempting to arrest their father. They said it was gross. It was gross to lie about this. It's on camera. So when you do that, when you just lie like this about immediately verifiable information, you turn into Israel. Nobody believes anything that Israel says. Nobody trusts Israel. That didn't happen due to unlimited anti-Semitism. That happened because Israel kept lying so flagrantly and so openly about things that we could see with our own 2 eyes that now, whenever an Israeli envoy says anything, I assume the exact opposite. And many Americans do as well. Many people around the world do as well. Anyway, yeah, here's J.D. Vance also using this as an opportunity to continue the anti-left rhetoric to try to say like, oh, it's the left that is doing this. We have to stop them. Where do you think it will go? Where do you think this will go, for the record? This is going to inevitably lead to the administration taking action, okay? The administration taking action against any sort of political dissent.
And while we're all mourning and rooting for and praying for everybody who was injured at that ICE facility, and as far as we know, it looks like some of the detainees, in other words, some of the potential illegal aliens, were some of those who were affected. Look.
You see, this is what I mean. He can't even recognize the humanity of those who were apprehended, who were shot and killed. Because if he does, then all of a sudden, it leads people to question why they're doing this. Why are you doing this to regular humans? You should be doing this to violent, barbaric monsters, not regular human beings. Do you understand?
Just because we don't support illegal aliens, we don't want them to be executed by violent assassins engaged in political violence either. So we're praying both for our ICE agents, but also for everybody who's affected by this terrible attack.
Praying for our ICE agents again. But also maybe the detainees as well, who are illegal aliens. Like, if calling a right-winger a fascist for demonstrating fascist ideology is violent rhetoric, what is calling a fucking detained person who was just slain an illegal alien? What is that? Words or violence doesn't go in one direction only. It goes in both directions. But these guys want to maintain whatever kind of violent, dehumanizing rhetoric they want to engage with. And then when you say that that violent and dehumanizing rhetoric is identical to the way that Nazis operated, you go, whoa, that's words are violence. Words are violence. How dare you?
Sane on the left. What Democrat is ready to look at this clown show that is now inspiring violence and say that will no longer speak for us who simply disagree? Gavin Newsom asks, what are ICE agents afraid of? The answer, Governor, is this.
Yeah, see,
this is what
this is how you know their anger is for everybody, by the way, because they're redirecting this to Gavin Newsom. They're redirecting the animosity to Gavin Newsom. Shouts out to Gavin, by the way, Big Gav. Not my favorite guy, but at least I'm glad that he's like a magnet for all of the hate and animosity in these trying times. Why are they redirecting it back to him? Because he said in the state of California, if you're a law enforcement officer, you can't wear a mask and hide your identity. That makes total sense. The do you mean? You're public servants.
That thousands of other conservatives shamelessly celebrated the assassination and called for more of them. Now imagine that in the same week, another right-winger shot up a country club
They're
while
crying
MAGA.
like crazy. They're just like, the Republican mentality is about perceived victimhood. Like they're attacking Christians. They're attacking our way of life. They're attacking traditional family values. They want us dead. They want us dead over and over and over again. And in the process of that perceived victimhood, this perceived victimhood narrative that they channel, they get increasingly more insane. But because they're professional victims, there are plenty of people in the base that also subscribe to this professional victimhood narrative. Like, think about that. These guys have all the levers of power and they're still crying. They do all of their wishes. They get away with whatever the they want to do. Unlimited violence to designated targets of the administration, vulnerable populations, whether they be trans, whether they be undocumented migrants or whatnot. And now also the left, right? Any expression of liberalism, any expression of empathy is now going to be punished. They have full control. People don't like what they're doing. So instead of addressing the democratic wishes of the majority of American society, they're just trying to stamp out people that say, I don't like this. This is fascism through and through. They are doing this at the behest of some of the most racist dipshits in society because they're not going to actually address the cost of living crisis. They're not going to actually offer you free health care. So they're just trying to throw red meat at key parts of their base. For the white evangelical Protestants, it was abortion. It was criminalizing abortion, making it a punishable offense, even though it's a part of healthcare, part of regular ass healthcare. And this was met with a lot of animosity, even from Republican voters, as a matter of fact. Then now they're turning around and giving a lot of the white nationalists in the base that are fearful of Mexicans and Guatemalans and whatnot, a opportunity to feel comfortable, an opportunity to say, hey, look, we got your back. We're doing things that we promised we were going to do. We're doing mass deportations. All the while, none of that is actually productive. It's not even good for the economy. It's actually very bad for the economy. And all you're doing is enforcing cruelty upon some of the most marginalized, some of the most vulnerable communities, just so a couple people can feel better because there's someone else that they can lord over, someone else that's lower than they are. And if you call that out, you're a enemy. What's going to happen when it's not only, 60% of the American public that's against this, but 75% of the American public that's against this? What's going to happen when it starts eating away at the base? Are they going to arrest all of us? Is that what they're going to do? Do they think that, like, if you simply deplatform or arrest or make threats of deplatforming or criminal prosecution against those who are critical of the administration's actions, what's going to happen when you criminalize that? Do you think that's going to make people feel better? You cannot stamp out discontent, especially if you are not offering anything material to the base of support. If you're not giving them an immediate improvement in their lives and you do this kind of shit, people are just going to keep getting increasingly more and more angry. And when there is no pressure valve, because communication is a part of this process in a democratic society, a part of the process is you communicate your anxieties, you communicate your anger, you communicate your frustration, and you do so by going out and protesting, for example. When you make that illegal, when you make protests illegal, when you make saying that the administration is wrong illegal, people are going to still feel angry, and they're not going to have a pressure valve. They're not going to have something that they can do to exercise their discontent. Anyway, Trump says, I've been briefed on the deadly shooting at ICE field office in Dallas, Texas. It has now been revealed that the deranged shooter wrote anti-ICE on his shell casings. This is despicable. The brave men and women of ICE are just trying to do their jobs and remove the worst of the worst criminals out of our country. But they are facing unprecedented increase in threats, violence, and attacks by deranged radical leftists. This violence is a result of radical left Democrats constantly demonizing law enforcement, calling for ICE to be demolished, and comparing ICE officers to Nazis. The continuing violence from radical left terrorists in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination must be stopped. ICE officers and other brave members of law enforcement are under grave threat. We already declared Antifa a terrorist organization, and I will be signing an executive order this week to dismantle these domestic terrorism networks. I am calling on all Democrats to stop this rhetoric against ICE and America's law enforcement right now. The Trump administration is fully committed to backing law enforcement, strong borders, securing our homeland, deporting violent, illegal criminals, and fully rooting out the left-wing domestic terrorism that is terrorizing our country. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Democrats are so stupid. Oh my God. If they cave on this, if they just don't actually come out and say this is ridiculous, the reason why people are angry is not because Democrats are saying anything. The reason why people are angry is because you're deporting their neighbors for no goddamn reason other than to distract people away from your inability to address the economic harm that they were fucking experiencing. If the Democrats don't come out and say that, they might as well just obey in advance and say, yes, you're right, Mr. President. We hate the evil radical left. And then they'll go get arrested too.